you begin to get, moments of ecstasy in some situations that you would never have imagined to bring you so much joy. Welcome back, brother. So I hope you enjoy the new setup. I think it's a lot cleaner. I think it suits me a little bit more, and hopefully you can see my personality start to come through a little more coherently. So I thought what we'd do in this video is talk a little bit about semen retention and how it is healing our internal reward systems, our minds. Now, I think the first thing to establish as we kind of circumnavigate through this notion that I'm proposing to you is that on the very primitive level, if we kind of unwrap our brains, at the very core we have that reptilian brain that helps us navigate through the world fundamentally with the premise of survival. Let's survive, to navigate to food, to water, to reproduce, let's say. Now, this is so deeply ingrained into our nervous system that we are unable to navigate around it. Now, unfortunately, as the world is set up in a particular way which does not serve us in this particular manner, it's not sensitive towards the fact that on the most fundamental levels we are driven to our survival. And the way society and culture is organized, we are, let's say, we're not needed to rely on that particular brain. What does this mean? Well, because we are inundated every single day with all this material that is sexually suggestive, let's say, and it predisposes us to behaviors that are a little bit more, what would you say, unsavory. We don't want to really project that into our habits, our relationships, and who we are, projecting that into the world. We want to kind of circumnavigate around that and bring us to a more wholesome way of living, integrating our shadows. We want to essentially be the same person as we are in a room with just ourselves. The process of sexual continence, of retaining our energy, of not spilling our seed, so to speak, has a extraordinarily powerful way of healing our brain, our reward systems, our nervous system, because we are coming from the perspective that the dopamine that is released when we're viewing this material, that spike that we get, I'm sure that if you're mindful enough to recognize your next sexual experience, that the adrenaline, the exhilaration, the hormones, your emotions at that particular point in time are so heightened, you come to such a psychological, mental, emotional peak that it's very hard to have the presence of mind to almost sit in that state and just be a witness to that particular energy that is happening inside of you. Now, all those things that I've mentioned before come at the consequence of that huge increase of dopamine. If you can imagine, it's like an X and a Y axis. You have that huge spike in dopamine. We as a species, there is no limitation, especially us men, as we are highly sexually charged. There is no limitation to how many times we can spike that dopamine, because we have all the sexual novelty available from the comfort of our phones, of our computer screens, our tablets, and it's everywhere. It really is. And if you've been on this channel, you know how much I speak on how pervasive this particular material is, and how it's absolutely condemning psychologically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually to our evolution and to our health in general. So when we begin to abstain from that particular act, we begin to conserve our energy, as it were. One of the things that doesn't get talked about enough is that healing aspect it has on those dopamine centers. If you imagine your synapses, these are two synaptic clefts, and the dopamine that gets excreted between those clefts, and it sits in that place, and that's where you experience that sensation of heightened emotions, heightened energy. All those neurochemicals sitting in that cleft for longer and longer periods of time. And the more you watch that illicit material and that those chemicals sit between those synaptic clefts, the more damage you're doing to the receptors. It begins to get desensitized because it's being released so much. It's like anything. If you keep, we all like junk food now and again. I'm guilty. I'll put my hands up. But if you ate pizza every single day, you get desensitized towards it. It's never as good because the novelty has worn off, because we're experiencing it more frequently. Same thing happens mentally in regards to SR and masturbation, PMO, things like that. So what we really want to come to the perspective of is, how can we start to increase that time between each activity? And if we can do a full reset, so that full 90 days is approximately what you say, they say that we should abstain for, then we are really giving our reward centers that break in which our clefts can recover, our receptors in that area can recover. And one of the huge benefits that you'll receive when you go on this path of sexual continence is you begin to get moments of ecstasy in some situations that you would have never ever imagined to bring you so much joy. A walk in the park and you're in ecstasy. Going to the gym, having a good workout is phenomenal. It's almost as if your sensitivity, your dopamine sensitivity to tasks that you enjoy but don't bring you as much joy as ejaculation, let's say, they begin to come into perspective as we're not abusing our receptors. So as we let that receptor heal, it becomes more sensitive to the smaller things that allow dopamine to be released there. And that, in my opinion, doesn't get spoken of enough, because it's like I say, you hear the birds chirping outside, you see a squirrel on a tree, you go for a walk on the beach and you're in ecstasy. You really are. And you would have never have. The trouble is with the dialogue is that a lot of people want to see research and charts and graphs and quantifiable data and things like that. I get it. But you'll never see the fruits of this practice unless you go on the journey yourself. It's so hard to convey even in words sometimes, because it has to become from a perspective of personal experience. What I would love to hear, actually, of any of that, because I know that a lot of guys are on this channel who are interested in this information, especially on my Twitter, message me every day about their personal journeys. I would love to hear a little bit more about the maybe let's keep it to the point about the sensitivity, or dopamine sensitivity to smaller tasks, and what you've experienced as a consequence of healing your internal reward systems, and how that has presented its way in your life to you. So my friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. I think it's something that we need to bring more attention to our peers and to our brothers, our fathers, and all the men that we wish to see strong in our lives. But with that being said, if you enjoyed the content, you can subscribe to my channel, and I'll bring you another video very soon. So take care, my friends.